Congressman Jim McGovern and your Congresswoman for North Carolina's 12th Congressional District, Alma Adams. Ladies and gentlemen, from the office of Congresswoman Alma Adams, Sandra Brown, Deputy Chief of Staff.
Good afternoon. I'm Sandra Brown with Congresswoman Alma S. Adams' office. I am the Deputy Chief of Staff, District Director, and the scheduler for Congresswoman Adams. Congresswoman Adams represents the 12th Congressional District of North Carolina, and on behalf of the Congresswoman and more than over 700,000 constituents in the district, we want to welcome you all to this very, very important event. We would also like to welcome Representative Jim McGovern of Massachusetts, District 2. Before we start, I'd like to get a little bit of housekeeping things out of the way. We do have refreshments for you all. They cannot be in this area in the auditorium, and they are just finished being set up. So if you feel like at any time that you need to step out just to get a little something to drink or some food, please do very quietly up the steps and to the left. Bathrooms are upstairs when you walk out the door, past the elevators, for both men and women. Also, for you all that are close to this door, we have restrooms right outside this door and up the hall. Now I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce Dr. Davida Lauren Haywood, Vice President of Student Affairs and Enrollment Manager at Johnson C. Smith University. Dr. Haywood earned a BS in Business Administration from Johnson C. Smith University, summa cum laude, and she earned her MA in Higher Education and Student Affairs and her PhD in Educational Administration and Higher Education from The Ohio State University. Congresswoman, I know you'll be excited about that. Dr. Haywood reports directly to the President and is Chief Officer responsible for developing a comprehensive program of enrollment and student support services for traditional, non-traditional, evening, online, and graduate students. Always committed to a holistic development and transformational experience of students, and over the course of her 2 decades plus career, Dr. Haywood has acquired extensive experience in strategic planning, fundraising and stewardship, and assessment and evaluation. Please welcome Dr. Davida Haywood.
Good morning, and thank you for the kind introduction. She did not have to say all of that. You could have just said my name and I would have been good. On behalf of our Board of Trustees, Interim President Stephen Boyd, and incoming 15th President Dr. Valerie Kinlock, I welcome you to Johnson C. Smith University. An extra special welcome is extended to our Congresswoman, Alma S. Adams, the godmother of HBCUs, and an honorary Golden Bull in her own right. We know that she wears the blue and gold from another HBCU up the road, but when she is here with us, she is quite aware that the color scheme is switched for the gold and blue. And although he may not know it yet, we are also glad to welcome and initiate another honorary Golden Bull, Representative Jim McGovern from the great Bay State of Massachusetts. What this means, Representative McGovern, is that now you are a part of our Golden Bull family and you're welcome back at any time. Welcome. Yes. Thank you. I hope that I can speak for our entire campus community, but we have felt quite honored this week on 100 Beatties Ford Road. Many of you know that on this past Monday, the United States Secretary of Energy, Jennifer M. Granholm, as well as Charlotte Mayor Vi Lyles, and many others were here with us on campus to discuss various aspects of clean energy and environmental equity. If you don't mind, I might suggest that our discussion today, focused on food security, is directly connected to and builds on our experiences from earlier in the week. Since 1867, Johnson C. Smith University has been empowering, transforming, and engaging the lives of students as Charlotte's only HBCU. Its students in personal and professional skill sets that have permitted them to matriculate, graduate, and contribute to their local, regional, national, and local communities. Each day, we aspire to educate and pour into students who can communicate effectively, think critically, and learn independently as well as collaboratively. But I should note that similar to K through 12, you can't achieve these educational concepts, feats, or aspirations when you are hungry. I think it is easy to conceive that students enrolled in higher education should be fine, right? Because they have access to meal plans, cafeterias, and campus eateries. But when we think about student success, and if we go back to Art Levine and Jana Nidifer's text, Beating the Odds, How the Poor Get to College, then the authors describe the myriad of challenges that students enrolled in colleges and universities face, let alone navigating how to sustain and nourish themselves once the cafeteria closes, or if they can even afford a meal plan without feeling embarrassed or ashamed, or simply put, going without. The thought of food insecurity occurs more than often than we think, even here. I know because my division oversees the food pantry, the Golden Bulls General Market. My staff have been here during the extended holidays and fed students, or been on grocery store shopping trips with them, watching them fill their baskets. I hope that today we not only talk about this issue as a collective, but reason and advocate for solutions that highlight the benefits of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, better known as SNAP, and local initiatives like JCSU Sustainability Village under the auspices and leadership of the Dean of the College of STEM, Dean Patrick Martin, who's in the audience, and Dr. Mark Dugo and his team of students. I'm not sure if Dr. Dugo is present, and their ongoing partnership with the Rosa Parks Farmers Market here in the historic West End. I hope that we will note the importance of historic food and farm to fork and table concepts and narratives that reaffirm that farming or getting our hands dirty or being one with the earth has been something unique and useful to our cultural existence from the very beginning. Finally, I hope that we value, but perhaps more importantly, believe and internalize that folks want access to healthy foods via urban and rooftop gardens, neighborhood agricultural associations, and policies at every level that farm workers and especially women of color farmers are now doing, performing, and leading in their communities. We have the opportunity to make our voices heard, and I can't think of a better space to do this in than at Johnson C. Smith University to lift them up. Thank you again for being here, and welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mecklenburg County Soil and Water Conservation District Board Chair, Barbara Bleiweiss.
Thank you. I always love it when people can pronounce my name right. It's great. So for those of you I'll say it one more time. Bleiweiss rhymes with fried rice. So when you see it, it just works every time. It works every time. I want to take the opportunity to thank you all for coming. This is a rare opportunity where not only do we have our candidates that are at the top of the ballot, the Soil and Water Conservation District, which is an independent entity, is the bottom of the ballot. So some of you may remember me as bottom of the ballot Barbara. So that's another way to remember me. But a good question, I think, going through a lot of people's is, what does soil and water have to do with farming? So I get a chance to share that with you. Soil and Water Conservation Districts are the local legal representative of the North Carolina Department of Agriculture. I'm sure many of you didn't know that. Our role in the fight against hunger actually had its beginnings in 1937. by helping farmers save their farmland from severe climate change. So we've been dealing with climate change since before it was called climate change. Districts would work with the local USDA offices to protect farmland from excessive soil erosion through what we call best management practices that conserve and manage nutrients, manage runoff, and conserve soil and water. Our forever partner in this fight has been forged with the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Soil Conservation Service, which is now the Natural Resource Conservation Service. And we have our state conservationist representing that agency, Mr. Tim Beard. If he would stand, and his staff, Odessa and Julius. Be very loud because we get funding for them, so we need to keep that. A good part of their funding and our funding, again, it comes through them, through different agencies, very important. Our conservation work and what you see in the Farm Bill is, again, through this organization. So when you think of that pie chart, which 80% is the SNAP program, the others are conservation, some other programs. So it's very, very important to all of us. We all play a role. So we are part of that ecosystem. And I'll also mention the following, that the North Carolina Department of Agriculture works very closely with the school systems throughout North Carolina. We are one of 13 states that has a very specific role in supporting local schools. And I'd like to introduce Mr. Fred Gilbert, who also represents the school system. So I'll summarize, and then I want to introduce the wonderful Alma Adams, and I'll summarize that we're part of this ecosystem, and it's good news, bad news. The good news is that in 2017, the USDA census for Mecklenburg County had about 11,600, give or take, acres of farmland, about the size of the town of Matthews. The bad news is it was down 12% from 5 years before. 5 years going forward, we did a closer look using land use codes, and we have about 13,000. And that's some good news because we're starting to recognize forestry as agriculture, and we're starting to recognize the smaller population, but very powerful, of urban farmers who are on less than 10 acres of land. So without boring you with some of the details, that's a very, very important feature because we're looking to local and federal and state to help us improve that because they are the future of farming in our area. The other good news is that Mecklenburg County endorsed a framework to preserve and protect local farmland in Mecklenburg County, and we're working with that. And is Erin Stanforth from the county, is she here? So Erin Stanforth, we need a big round of applause for this woman. Yes. Yes. So with her help, with her critical analysis and support, we're at a point where we can really start doing some good. So with that, as you can tell, I am an optimist. The glass to me is always half full, and we keep pouring. So let me now introduce another person that helps build that confidence. And I'm going to describe Alma Adams in as briefly as I can, but it never does enough justice. Congresswoman Alma Adams represents the 12th Congressional District, of which we are squarely in, here in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, and Cabarrus. She serves on the House Committee of Agriculture and also the House Committee on Education and Workforce, where she serves as a ranking member of the Workforce Protection Subcommittee. She also serves on subcommittees that deal with nutrition, foreign agriculture, and horticulture. She is a champion for nutrition and food security issues, where hunger is one of her 4-H legislative priorities. Due in part to her efforts, as well as Congressman McGovern, the average monthly SNAP benefits have increased, and we keep working it. She has signature legislation, but her biggest signature is her hats. So again, let me introduce Congresswoman Alma Adams.
Well, good morning, and thank you so much for that kind and gracious introduction. I am Alma Adams, and let me just say how honored I am to welcome you to Focus on Food, our second quarter meeting of the Adams Hunger Initiative, with our special guest this morning, co-chair of the House Hunger Caucus, and my good friend, Congressman Jim McGovern. And thanks so much, Congressman McGovern, for making the trip down here. And let's give Congressman a hand. I also want to make sure that I acknowledge my staff. I have a lot of staff here today, and of course, without my staff, I could not be an effective Congresswoman for you. So I want all my staff to stand up. Sam Spencer over here is my comm director. Yeah. All right. You know, we founded the Adams Hunger Initiative in 2014 to bring together stakeholders across Mecklenburg County to address hunger and food insecurity in our community. The Adams Hunger Initiative holds 4 meetings every year, and today's conference is our second quarter meeting, and I'm just so grateful to see all of you here. Special thanks to Johnson C. Smith University. Thank you so much for hosting us, especially to our dean and to Nisa Moore and to all of the staff who have allowed us to come and set up here. And also, I just want to acknowledge President Clay Armbruster, who has been a transformative leader for our university. He's been a great partner to our community. And tomorrow is his last day. So let's give him a round of applause. Additionally, I do want to welcome 2 of our co-hosts from the Mecklenburg Soil and Water Conservation District Board of Supervisors, the Honorable Nancy Carter and the board chair, Barbara Blythewhite. Did I get it? Blythewhite. Right. Also, we have some incredible panelists here today: Kenya Joseph, Ebony Lockett, Sherry Czar, and Tina Postel, which you'll hear from shortly, and many other esteemed guests from local government, nonprofits, and our Adams Hunger Initiative partners. I thank you all for being here today. I know we have some elected officials, and let me just tell you, service is the rent indeed we pay for living on God's earth. And I'd like for all of our elected leaders to stand up who may be here today. Now, many of you submitted some great questions in advance of the event. Over 75 questions came in, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to get to many of them today. But we're here today to talk about hunger and the 2023 Farm Bill. I strongly believe that no person in the United States of America, the richest country in the world, should ever go hungry. So thanks to the various programs like SNAP that serve people in need, and what we're doing here at Johnson C. Smith University, we've made significant strides in closing the hunger and malnutrition gaps, but we still have a ways to go. As senior members of the House Committee on Agriculture, Congresswoman McGovern and I are working hard to address these gaps that still exist, but we need you. You, the boots on the ground, the folks who are here, the folks who are making a difference in our communities each and every day, and the folks who are a key part of informing what policy we should advance. And I always like to say that you need good policymakers to make good policy. We want to remember that. But the other side of that coin is that you need committed, hardworking folks like each of you to let us make that forward progress. And that progress is important because we're facing a whole new set of challenges around hunger and nutrition. The lack of adequate federal funding for nutrition is a problem that dates well before the pandemic. Food insecurity is a persistent problem for Black, Latino, and African family and Native American families. Nearly 20% of Black and almost half of the Latino families were food insecure in 2020. COVID-19 has only exacerbated these challenges. However, programs like SNAP and WIC and USDA's Farmers to Families Food Box help to close food insecurity gaps for communities across the country. And so we've strengthened safety nets for households across America and specifically targeted food security to ensure that everyone has the opportunity for a better tomorrow. I've been doing this work now to connect federal and local government for as long as I've been a member of Congress, and well before that. But in every Congress, the Adams Hunger Initiative pushes for robust funding for SNAP and fights against cuts to the program. And we're still fighting. I've got a good fighting partner right here. But we know that any cuts to federal food programs are unacceptable, and they cause tremendous harm to communities. You know, you can't punish people because they're poor, because they need assistance. We need to help them. Every year, I requested the total funding amount for SNAP. However, I believe that the program historically has been woefully underfunded. And that's why our signature hunger legislation for closing the meal gap seeks to authorize one of the most significant increases in funding to SNAP ever. Improving access to SNAP, WIC, and all of the other federal nutrition programs is essential to protecting the most vulnerable, especially during these unpredictable times of our country's economy and what we face. And poor folks didn't cause the problem with the economy. I just want to put that on the record. And that's something that Congressman McGovern has worked on his entire time in Congress. He and I both believe you don't punish people because they're poor, because they need assistance. You help them. You show them some compassion. And for those of you who don't know him, Congressman Jim McGovern serves as the top Democrat on the House Rules Committee and is a senior member of the House Agriculture Committee. As a matter of fact, he's my seatmate, so we sit next to each other and we have an opportunity to talk back and forth. But he was first elected to Congress in 1996, and he represents Massachusetts' 2nd Congressional District, which includes his hometown of Worcester, as well as much of central and western Massachusetts. McGovern, who also serves as chairman of the board of the Congressional Hunger Center, is a fearless and globally recognized champion in the fight to end hunger. And as a leading author of the George McGovern Bob Dole International Food for Program, the congressman's work has provided nutritious meals in a school setting to nearly 9 million of the world's poorest children. And on the House Ag Committee, McGovern is a strong supporter of nutrition assistance programs like SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, leading successful pushback against Republican attempts to cut food assistance during the 2018 Farm Bill, when he served as ranking member of the Nutrition Subcommittee. His advocacy during the pandemic in support of nutrition programs like SNAP, school breakfasts and lunches and summer meals led to major increases in benefits for some of our nation's most vulnerable citizens. In 2021, he began convening a series of hearings, site visits, roundtables, and listening sessions across the country, which led to the first White House Conference on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health in over 50 years, as well as a nationwide strategic plan to end hunger by 2030, an event the Adams Hunger Initiative partnered with last fall. And for his work, McGovern has earned a 2016 James Beard Leadership Award from the James Beard Foundation and a 2008 McGovern Dole Leadership Award from the World Food Program USA. So, without further ado, I am so honored to introduce my friend, my colleague, the gentleman from Worcester, representing Massachusetts' 2nd Congressional District. Let's stand for Congressman Jim McGovern.
Well, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you, Alma, for that incredibly kind introduction. After that buildup, I can hardly wait to hear what I'm going to say. But I'm thrilled to join you all here today at Johnson C. Smith University. And let me begin today by just recognizing what an amazing Congresswoman and anti-hunger champion you all have in Alma Adams. Alma is a gift, not just to the people of this district, but to the entire Congress and really to the entire country. She is so dedicated to this work and cares so deeply about these issues. She is the founder and the co-chair of the bipartisan HBCU Caucus and a leader in Congress on supporting our HBCUs, like the incredible university hosting us here today. And on issues like food security and hunger, Alma is a leader in Congress and an incredible partner as the former vice chair of the Agriculture Committee back in the good old days when we were in the majority, and hopefully we'll be back in the majority very soon. But most importantly, Alma doesn't just talk the talk, she walks the walk. And her bill that she mentioned to strengthen SNAP, the Closing the Meal Gap Act, is a critical piece of legislation that would strengthen SNAP and ensure that those who need the most help can put food on the table. And I'm proud to be a co-sponsor of her important bill. And her bill is one of our top organizing tools to push for an expanded anti-hunger safety net. You know, look, we have also worked together to increase SNAP benefits. And while we've secured some modest increases to the program, Alma and I are going to fight and keep fighting to lift benefits until they actually reflect the cost of food in this country. But perhaps most importantly, Alma understands that the most important thing that we can do as members of Congress is sometimes just to listen. You know, one of the problems in Washington is we have too many people who think they know how to solve every problem, and not enough people who actually sit down with hungry people, people who have had lived experiences of food insecurity, people who are living in poverty, and actually listen to them about what they need to survive and get ahead. Alma Adams is somebody who doesn't just understand policy, she understands the pain people face, and she works hard to turn their stories and their struggles into policy that makes a difference. So I want to thank Alma for convening this important discussion, but also for her thoughtful inclusion of who should be here today. Not just people who can talk about politics, but people who can talk about the situation on the ground and how it impacts real people and real families, because ultimately that is what matters. And as Alma said, for those of you who don't know me, ending hunger has been a top priority of mine since I first got elected to Congress 1,000 years ago. I'm somebody who believes that food ought to be a fundamental human right for every single person in this country and on this planet. And in the richest country in the history of the world, I think it is an outrage and a shame that even a single person should go hungry. And that might sound like a political statement, but believe it or not, there was a time in this country when most politicians agreed that we can and we should end hunger, that ending hunger was possible, that food insecurity was a solvable problem that we could actually make progress on. In fact, my own mentor in politics, a liberal Democratic senator named George McGovern, who ran for president in 1972, no relation, but great last name. I worked my way through college in his Senate office, and people used to come up to me and say, I'm a big supporter of your dad's. And I would say to them, well, keep supporting my dad. My dad owns a liquor store in Worcester, Massachusetts. We need your help. They look a little bit puzzled. But he was one of the first people who helped build the coalition that led to major progress in the fight against hunger all throughout the 1970s. In May of 1968, he was watching when CBS aired an hour-long television broadcast entitled Hunger in America that documented the growing malnutrition and hunger crisis across America. That broadcast brought the problem of hunger into living rooms across the country, showcasing the plight of millions of people in this country who do not know where their next meal would come from. And Senator McGovern later commented to me about one of its scenes, which showed a little boy standing in a school lunchroom watching his classmates eat. And when the reporter asked the boy what he was thinking, he lowered his head, dug his toe into the floor, and said softly, I'm ashamed. Why are you ashamed? Asked the reporter. Because, said the boy, I haven't got any money. You know, from his comfortable home in Washington, D.C., George McGovern said, it is not that little boy who should be ashamed. He said, I should be ashamed as a United States senator who didn't even know that children who can't afford it are not provided a school lunch. So he did something about it. The next day, he introduced a resolution in the Senate creating the Select Committee on Nutrition and Human Needs. And Bob Dole, a staunch Republican senator from Kansas, joined him in this bipartisan mission to end hunger. They even convinced Richard Nixon, of all people, to hold the first ever White House conference on hunger that actually came up with real ideas that led to the expansion of SNAP, WIC, school lunches, and more. They actually helped in a bipartisan way start to chip away at the hunger problem in this country. And then came the 1980s. The rise of Ronald Reagan ushered in an era of trickle-down economics. And with that came increasing attempts to demonize those who relied on anti-hunger programs to just get by. And those attacks escalated. And programs like SNAP became more and more politicized. And Republicans used racist dog whistles to stigmatize and target those who rely on these benefits. Funding was cut. Our social safety net was chipped away at, and hunger came back with a vengeance. And by the time I got elected in 1996, the year of the dreaded welfare reform legislation pushed by Newt Gingrich and others in Congress, the situation was so bad that I knew that my top priority in Congress was restoring the political will to end hunger in America. And today, at long last, I think we are finally getting back on the right track, slowly but surely. You know, for too long, there has been a lack of empathy and awareness about how big this problem is. There have been too many politicians willing to demonize poor people. But I think two big things have changed. First, the pandemic blew the lid off the issue of hunger and exposed how serious a problem this is and how many families are struggling with food insecurity. And for many families, it was the first time ever that they experienced hunger. It became a household topic and something the news began covering again. And second, for the first time in my career in Congress, we have a president of the United States who is willing to make ending hunger a central component of his domestic policy agenda. I mentioned that first White House conference on hunger, and I have been trying for all the time I have been in Congress to get a second conference, because that first conference produced results. Things happened. And, you know, I wrote president after president trying to get them to take this issue on. And always there was an excuse why we couldn't do it. And so when Biden became president, I tried again. Admittedly, I didn't try under the other guy because I didn't think it was worth it. But anyway, Biden came, I said, this is our chance to try this again. And so I wrote to him and I talked to him. And I talked to his policy advisors and they said, well, you know, we want it to be bipartisan. So I worked in a bipartisan way. You know, I had Senator Booker from New Jersey. I had Senator Braun, Republican from Indiana, and Congresswoman Jackie Walorski, a Republican from Indiana. We all made the request together. And they said, oh, yeah, but, you know, it's going to cost money to put this conference on. So I got a couple of $1 million put into an appropriations bill, you know, to make sure that the conference was funded. And then we, you know, all these different issues. But then finally they said, yes, we will do it. And thanks to this White House conference, for the first time in a long time, we are making progress on fighting hunger and improving nutrition. Hillary Clinton likes to say it takes a village. She's right, but it takes a plan. And if you don't have a plan, then the village doesn't know what to do. And out of this White House conference came a plan. We now have a plan. We have a blueprint, a national strategy. And if you're not aware of it, Google this and look at it. It is really quite extraordinary. It tells us what we need to do. A national strategy on hunger, nutrition, and health. It is a whole of society approach to addressing the twin challenges posed by hunger and poor nutrition. And now Alma and I are fighting to make sure that we turn this plan into action, and we have secured some results. A year ago today, we did not have a permanent summer EBT program to help address child hunger. We do now. A year ago, we didn't have a law to reduce food waste by making it easier to donate perfectly good but unused food. We do now. A year ago today, we weren't screening military families for hunger and working to end hunger in the military. We are now. And a year ago today, we weren't moving towards produce prescriptions and expanded access to free school meals. We are now. And by the way, and let me just say this about the incredible Congresswoman you have in Alma Adams. She's been talking about universal school meals since long before it was popular, since her days in the state legislature. And she was right then, and she is right now. We ought to have universal free school meals for every single child in the United States of America. So the national strategy is also challenging us all to look at the structural inequities of our food system. to look at and close disparities in food insecurity and diet-related diseases, to address food apartheid once and for all. Some people say food deserts. I don't say food deserts. Deserts are natural. Apartheids are man-made. It is not natural that we have any area in our community where people don't get access to good food. The bottom line is we need to reimagine our food system into one that empowers smaller farmers and uplifts local food systems, one that prioritizes organic production and tackles inequities that persist, and one that improves access to culturally appropriate foods and supports the farmers who grow that food. We need to transition from a system that is reliant on emergency food assistance to one that ensures that every American is food insecure once and for all. And we need to start finally treating hunger as the health issue that it is. And that means not only improving access to and incentivizing the consumption of nutritious food, but it also means better integrating food and nutrition into our healthcare system. You know, hunger is costing our healthcare system billions and billions of dollars every year. I mean, we cannot afford not to make this transition. And by the way, nutrition and good food is not only preventative, it is also curative. And let me just give you one example. In the lead up to this White House conference, there were some mini conferences that were held. One was in New York City that Mayor Eric Adams held, and I had breakfast with him before the conference began. And he told me that he had diabetes so bad that his doctor told him that he was going to lose his eyesight, that he's probably going to lose toes and fingers. And he said, well, like, what do I do about it? And he said, well, I don't know. You just keep on, taking your medicine. Then he talked to somebody else who said, you know what? We need to change your lifestyle here a little bit. And he did. And the bottom line was he changed his lifestyle so dramatically that he basically reversed his diabetes, not only for him, but for his mother. So food is medicine, right? The national strategy gives us a roadmap on how to accelerate all this work all across the country. Look, I've never been more hopeful or optimistic about what we can achieve because I have seen what we have already accomplished. Talking to some of the panelists before this gathering here today, I mean, you're going to hear from them. I mean, there's some amazing things happening in this community. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? The wheel has been invented. We need to take what works and we need to replicate it all across our state, all across our country. The unity and the energy and the determination of people in this room and across the country who are fighting to end hunger is making a difference. And I'm just here to tell you, we just got to keep it going because we have a long way to go, but we are going in the right direction. It is literally the work, the energy here is literally lighting a fire under the political establishment in this country that has turned a blind eye to hunger for too long. Hunger is a political condition. We have the money, we have the food, we have the infrastructure, we have everything, but we have lacked the political will. I used to have this teacher in college. He used to end every class by saying the same thing. He'd say, remember, the world will not get better on its own. Class dismissed. And you know what? When I took his class, I had no idea what the hell he was talking about. But I do now. Good things just don't happen on their own, right? Like-minded people who are determined to make a difference, come together and demand the change. Progress can only happen when good people, like-minded people, come together and demand change. And I'm under no illusions about the difficulty of the task at hand. I mean, Alma and I, as we approach the Farm Bill, are dealing with people who put forward a narrative about hunger that does not reflect the reality. They tell people all the time that all people need to do is get a job, and then we won't have any more hunger. And they want more and more work requirements piled on to SNAP, which translates into cuts to the program. The bottom line is this. The majority of people who can work, who are on SNAP, actually do work. So when people say the opposite, they're not telling you the truth. And as well, people on SNAP, it's a lifetime commitment. The average time someone's on SNAP is a year or less. That's just not true. Or that people go out and they buy extravagant meals, lobster and filet mignon with their benefits. I want to know the store where you can buy lobster tails and filet mignon with SNAP benefits. It is offensive that elected officials on the Agriculture Committee who are charged with the oversight of the SNAP program don't even take the time to know what the hell the program does and how it works and who the people who are on the program, what their lives are like. Either that or they know the truth and they purposely go out and deceive the American people because somehow, it's red meat to the far right wing of this country. That has to stop. We have to call people out, who push lies, who push misinformation. I'm on, as I said, this is a big challenge. But when people tell me that solving big problems like hunger is impossible, I just tell them to get lost. People said we couldn't land a man on the moon. And guess what happened the same year as the first White House Conference on Hunger? We landed a man on the moon. We used to have leaders who told us that the sky was the limit, that there was no task too great and no mission that we could not accomplish if we worked together. But somewhere along the line, and somewhere along the way, this country started thinking small. And I don't know when that happened, but it did happen. And we lost our nerve to take on big issues and to solve big problems. Well, I think it's time to start thinking big again. And I know that we can end hunger. I know that we can do better. We have to, because every single person living in this country and in this world deserve the dignity of waking up each day without having to worry about where their next meal will come from. Food ought to be a fundamental human right for every single person. And thanks to all of your work, we hear from these great panelists and Alma, but I know the people in this audience here. I know you are working in this field in 1,000 different ways. I mean, understand that because of the work of all of us here today, we are on our way to ending hunger in this country. We just cannot give up. We cannot give in to the naysayers. We have to keep on fighting. This is worth it. And I'll just close with this. Somebody asked me one time, well, don't you get frustrated? I said, yeah, I get frustrated all the time. I said, but one of the things that keeps me going, that is the fact that in my congressional district and in every congressional district in this country, there are children who are hungry. And if you've ever seen a child who is hungry, it breaks your heart. And look, we can fix this. And that is what this day is about. So I thank Alma for convening this meeting. I thank all of you for having me here today, and I look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for that rousing, very motivational presentation. With thanks to Sam Spencer, I actually know what a media kit is now. I never knew that before. And I took a chance to click on that link and see the very important legislation that these wonderful people and their teams have introduced. So the programs, the Small Farms Act, for example, which is very important, which starts to encourage support for small farmers, which we mentioned earlier, ways to increase benefits for seniors and so forth. And those types of legislation gives us great hope. When I look for inspiration, though, I look locally. And so our panelists, and I used to do a quick intro of them, can't take too long. They have vision, entrepreneurship. What we lack in farmland, we make up in innovation and so forth. So what I'd like to do is have each very quickly, please introduce yourself, and then we'll get into some question and answers, if we will. So Cherie.
There we go. Hello, everyone. I'm so happy and honored to be here with the congressional representatives and to be in the community that we serve. My name is Cherie Jazar. I am the co-founder and owner of a urban farm here in Charlotte called Deep Roots CPS Farm. CPS stands for Community Planning Solutions because we feel, farming, agriculture is the solution for bringing community together. I sit in this seat representing not only small farmers, but Black farmers. And my family here, let my husband wave his hands. He's a farmer in our city, and my son is a farmer. So I represent farmers. And I'm so honored to be here to represent farmers in our community. And I see some farmers here. Hey, Daniel.
Oh, there's Daniel. Thank you. Ebony.
Yes, I am Ebony Lockett. I am the direct descendant of migrant and immigrant farmers. And one of the things that was gifted to me by my ancestors and by my mom is a documentary that Ed Amparo, who was with the White House, gifted, and it's called The Harvest of Shame. And so it talks about how farmers who are yielding and wielding are the very ones that are hungry. And so when we talk about that shame issue, that's critical. And it speaks to the work that I do. I'm the founder of Harvesting Humanity, and we reimagine learning and development. I'm also a 22-year educational practitioner. Many of my years here in Charlotte, North Carolina, right here on the west side at West Mecklenburg High School. And I will also say that I am the board chair, the proud board chair of Rosa Parks Farmers Market, who stand in solidarity with these farmers, farmers like Deep Roots, farmers like many of you and the community. And so we really are really grateful for this opportunity and thank our congresspersons for putting this on. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kenya Joseph. I am the president of Hearts and Hands Food Pantry. We are an independent food pantry that serves Mecklenburg County as well as the surrounding counties. I'm also the chair of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Food Policy Council. Proud to say that our most recent accomplishment is bringing in the newest farmers market into Mecklenburg County, the North Meck Community Farmers Market, supporting small local growers who have not been in business for more than 3 years to start developing new farmers and new people who want to our space. Thank you so much for having me. I just want to shout out to Congresswoman McGovern. You share our mission at our pantry. Our mission is food is a basic human right. And we appreciate you for letting everybody know.
Good afternoon. My name is Tina Pastel, and I'm the CEO for Loaves and Fishes Friendship Trays. And I'm so inspired by your words and your action, Congressman McGovern, and also Congresswoman Alma Adams. I'm here today to represent the 106,000 individuals. And let me state that number one more time. 106,000 individuals who relied on our network of emergency food pantries and our Meals on Wheels program just last year to have access to healthy food. To put that number into perspective, that's enough to fill up Bank of America Stadium and Spectrum Center and Bojangles Coliseum. So folks who are busy working do not have time to contact their local legislators and talk about food insecurity. So our team at Loaves and Fishes Friendship Trays, we are on the front lines advocating for those who don't have enough food to put around their table and access to fresh, healthy food, because we too believe that food is medicine. So thank you for believing in healthy food access for all.
Could you please ask your first question?
Yes, I can. So, as I said, I believe in representation matters. As in this community, we have Black elected officials, we have a Black sheriff, we also have Black farmers, right? And farmers who look like the neighbors that we see each day. So we believe where food comes from and who has control over producing the food is also an important element of ensuring access for communities. What policy solutions do you have that will encourage the development and sustaining of farms and Black farmers in closer proximities to the communities who lack access to healthy, nutritious, rich foods?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for the question. Thank you for doing what you're doing and, and kind of leading the way. I mean, one of the things as we approach this farm bill, I mean, there's a tendency for most of the support to go to the big, gigantic farms, the kind of corporate farms, that produce, at record levels. And that's not always the best farming, not as the quality farming. What we want to do is to try to recalibrate, where the support structures come from, in the farm bill to support our smaller, our medium-sized farms, our minority-owned farms, our black farmers, people who are growing stuff for a very culturally diverse population. But also, as we were talking before, you were talking to me about the 5 different kinds of basil that you. So I didn't know there was that many kinds of basil. That's how much I know, right? But also, farmers. We want to support our local farmers. We want them to be present as part of an education effort to help people understand what is good food, how you prepare some of these things, because that's one of the challenges we have. It's not just about handing people good food. We don't even teach kids about nutrition or about how you cook. In this, we have a whole bunch of people in this country who don't know how to prepare anything. And our hospitals are learning about that, but a lot of our food banks are learning about that and providing skills. So we want our farm bill to be more farmer friendly to our smaller farmers.
Okay, I want to thank this incredible panelist here and just say that, one of the things as we're trying to educate our small farmers, I want to say I do have a bill, of equity for our black farmers because not seen it. We're still struggling with that. But one of the things that I've tried to do and that we're going to have to do is educate our committee and our colleagues about what's important here. But, and in doing that, I've had a number of conversations and prepared a number of what we call letters to our the Secretary Vilsack, about what we need to be doing and how the distributions need to be made, et cetera. So not only are we going to try to through here to educate our small farmers and so forth, but we got to understand the value that they bring to this table. And we have a huge education process before us. And all of you here certainly can help us be in other words, be the wind beneath our wings to help us move our members along. Yeah.
Thank you again for your time. Many credible sources report diet-related illness as being the #1 cause of death and disability in the United States. And the CDC reports that the United States students receive less than 8 hours of required nutrition education each school year. What is being done at the local and state levels to address this disconnect?
Well, I certainly hope that we have some state legislators out here. Certainly, we've tried to be in touch with them about what they're doing. But I think we're looking at making sure that we have the proper diets in the schools. And as you mentioned, illnesses, I am a diabetic. And I've tried to have a lifestyle change myself, get rid of some of the candy and stuff I like to eat. So my A1C was really good the other day, and the doctor was just real pleased. She came in with her head up and a big smile. And but it's really important. And again, as the congressman has said, we've taken things out of the schools that really I think could probably helped us a little better. As I was coming along, I'm older than probably a number of you in here, but I took home economics. So I learned how, of course, I learned how to cook from my mom and grandmother and all of that. But we've taken that out of the schools, so kids just really don't know. And I don't think it should be, and I never thought it should have been, of course, just for female students. I wanted my son, he's a pretty good cook right now. how to do that as well. But I think we have to really get back to really educating and begin at the bottom.
So I agree with everything she said. But let me just say, we need universal free breakfast and lunch for every child in school in this country. And, you know, we're not going to, the federal government, based on the divided Congress we have right now, is not going to just do it. We're going to have to get states to do it one by one. A number of states are doing it: California, Minnesota, Maine, Vermont. I'm trying to push our legislature in Massachusetts toward doing it. I mean, that's one thing that we all should be dedicated to. Secondly, on the federal level, I have a bill to try to increase the reimbursement for school meals so that school districts can not just provide food for the sake of providing food, but we're providing food working with our local farmers that is prepared in a way that is not only healthy, but actually smells and looks and tastes good. We also have to understand that we have a lot of schools that have infrastructure challenges. You know, I had a farm in my district that grew peaches. They wanted to donate some peaches to a school of my choice. So I decided I picked the elementary school that I went to. And I said, look, we have peaches that can last you for, you know, a couple of weeks here. And they came back and said to me, we don't have the refrigeration, nor do we have a kitchen. So we can't take these. The food that we give our kids has to be, you know, prepackaged, pre-processed. And if it's, we have to change that, right? You can teach nutrition without having a separate course. I visited a school where they're teaching nutrition lessons in the context of math and science. The day I was there, they were saying, bring in the drink you drink most with all your meals, and people brought in sodas, right? So the deal was you pour out the soda, and we're learning measurements today. You know, here's say some sand, put the amount of sand in the bottle or can that is equal to the amount of sugar, and it's a lot. And here is the thing. I talked to this little kid, and I said, what did you learn? He said, I learned having a soda every once in a while is not bad for you, but having it all the time is not good. There's too much sugar, and I could have health issues. But then as he was walking away, he said, and as I was walking away, he said, I'm going to tell my mother and father that too. Kids are teachers too. Let me tell you, for those of us who have had kids, right? I mean, going to a supermarket with your kids and they're like, I want this candy. And you're like, here, I'll give you the box of candy if you just quiet down, right?
Yep.
But if kids are not asking for that and they're making different asks, that can change not only their lifestyle, but the lifestyle of their entire family. So, you know, there's this ripple effect here. But the idea that we haven't prioritized this, that it's 2023. And just the final thing I'm going to say, I hear all the time, oh, it costs money. Everything costs money, right? Yeah, it does. But as I pointed out in my opening remarks, by not dealing with these issues, it's costing us much more. And I got to be honest with you, I'm going to be truthful with you. I don't even vote for the defense budget anymore. I don't even vote because it's too damn big. I want a military second to none, but the bottom line is we need a new definition of national security in this country, one that includes things like the health and well-being of our kids. So, 60 Minutes did an episode the other day about cost overruns in the Pentagon, about this $300 switch that the Pentagon paid like $20,000 for. I mean, like, really? I mean, we can't find the savings to get this right. I mean, this is a political condition, and we have to make choices, and we need to make better choices.
Yeah, the congressman yesterday that it's really about priorities and where we place them. I can recall, I'm not sure how many years ago, but it's been some years ago when I served in the North Carolina House for those 20 years. One of the bills, and I think he mentioned. At what I call the Mother's Day bill, and I got together with some of my Republican legislators. Child nutrition, so that every child could get free breakfast and at no cost, because kids who didn't have money they felt really they were embarrassed, and so they didn't want to eat. So ultimately, they didn't eat at all. And those kinds of things need to continue on. Hope that North Carolina still has something in place for that. But
In supporting local farmers and not just big ag initiatives, what solutions have been proposed to pipeline fully local and small farmers into being included in addressing food insecurity in their communities? A quick parallel to that is, for example, the Farm to Families Food Box Program. So what is being done to fully integrate small and local farmers into programs like that and expanding their direct participation in food insecurity solutions on a broader scale?
Yeah. So, during the pandemic, we did a little bit. We did some of that, right? And we did it in a way that that actually empowered some of our smaller farmers. We need to continue that. Well, things during the pandemic. Some of the stuff we did during the pandemic, we should have been doing when there wasn't a pandemic, right? So we had to learn from that. The challenge is going to be on this farm bill is, when it comes to empowering small and medium-sized farmers, is basically being able to beat back an intensive, well-funded lobby of big corporate farmers. I mean, look, we have a system in this country that funds campaigns that requires that people run for office have to raise lots and lots of money. And that's where these big corporate farms come in. And they have an undue influence. If you look at the percentage of government subsidies that go to smaller farms, it's minuscule. All of it goes to these bigger farms. And again, I mean, we have to, produce enough to provide for the needs of everybody in this country. But it doesn't have to be that you have to say, well, small farms have outlived their usefulness. No, we want small farms. And by the way, if you're a smaller farm, you're doing better farming. If you're a smaller farm, you're more concerned about public safety, because if you're not, you'll go out of business. If you're a big corporate farm, you can poison somebody, you can still stay in business. So the deal is that the practices at the smaller level are much better, and much more tied to the community. We were talking beforehand, and this is the way I look at the farm bill and about this whole effort to combat hunger. It's about community building, right? It is not just about one program. It's not just about SNAP. It's not just about school feeding. It's not just about supporting our smaller farms. It's about all of the above, right? It's everything. And I notice at my farmers markets that, that people come in and when they buy things, they get their double up bucks, they buy from local farmers, that the conversations that go on are sometimes as valuable as the food that they get. And everybody wants to provide their families with the very, very best food. And sometimes you can only learn about what the best food is and how to prepare it from our local farmers. But we're doing the farm bill in a way that is troubling to me, in that I don't really feel like we're doing kind of check the box hearings, but we're not exploring, kind of new approaches and innovative approaches to support our local farms. I'll just close with this. One of the reassuring things is that the Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack, thinks just like you do about this. And we are trying to come up with a policy plan, for those of us who want to do things a little bit differently, that will be more supportive of our smaller farmers. But I will share that with all of you as well. But he is kind of leading the charge on that.
And I have his cell phone number, and he and I talk. He and I have many conversations. So yeah, Congressman, that.
Tina.
Well, at Loaves and Fishes Friendship Trays, our mission is not just to feed people, but to make sure that people are well fed. And my staff team have heard me joke on several occasions that based on the donations that we get in, we could feed the world twice over with Pop-Tarts and processed food. But it's not lost on us that 68% of who we serve report being diagnosed with one or more chronic diseases like diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, renal disease. And we know that food is medicine, so we often have to make healthy food purchases. So
You said it before, answers come down to funding. So what funding opportunities do you foresee, whether it be in the Farm Bill or otherwise, that might be available on a federal level to support healthy food access for all?
So I think, I don't know enough about all the stuff that's happening in North Carolina, but I think you are taking advantage of the 1115 waiver, Medicaid waiver. We are doing that in Massachusetts. I think we're doing some more creative stuff than you are here, in terms of getting to your point, medically tailored meals, providing infrastructure to people to be able to, it's one thing to say, make a healthy meal. But if you don't have a stove, if you don't have a refrigerator, what do you do? And by the way, going back to what I said earlier about the importance of listening to people with lived experience, I just assumed that if people had an apartment, that they had a kitchen. And I have learned in my own district that people who have apartments don't necessarily have kitchens. So, we're using it also to help provide those families with infrastructure to be able to cook meals, which is essential. And we also have to work with our medical institutions to get them to buy into some of this, right? I have some great hospitals in Massachusetts that are the models. And I have hospitals that are very, very well funded and well known that don't do a fraction of what they should be doing. And part of it, I think, in that case, it's not about money. It's about like getting the establishment to say, I'm going to do something differently. And people don't like to do things different. We were doing the same thing the same way for 100 years. If there was something wrong with it, we would have changed it a long time ago. No. We have to get people to start thinking out of the box. Just say this. We have a challenge with federal funds right now in the sense that we are dealing with a situation where there may very well be less federal funds available next year than there was this year and the year before. That's what happens when you have people get elected that want to slash budgets and don't really care about people. But that's a whole nother discussion. But the bottom line is that I think the answers and the solutions are not just at the federal level, it's what you're doing at the local level. And to the extent that we are creating models that potentially can be sustainable at the local level, it makes it easier for us to then say, this is what we're talking about. This is the kind of stuff that we're supporting. So I hope that what's happening here locally, and there's lots of stuff happening in Charlotte that is really encouraging, right? I know you share it with Alma, but share it with us too, and she'll share it with us because we want to brag about what's working, and we want to brag about collaborations that are working, that show promise, that we want to replicate. Because you can't count on members of Congress to necessarily come to forums like this and to listen to people or to meet with people. We had a force feed Congress. I'm going to tell you something. I know this is a very radical,
That's all right.
shocking thing to say. And it'll shock a lot of you, but intelligence is not a prerequisite for serving in Congress. All right. So we need you to teach us and to make sure that we are aware of the good stuff that's happening locally.
Yeah, let me phrase that another way. You don't always know what you don't know. And we have situations like that.
One of the things that we're using to sell universal school meals is that the administration is moving toward expanding community eligibility. So community eligibility when it comes to school meals has been that if you have a school district where the majority of kids, or I think it was something like 45% of the kids are qualify for free or reduced. I think I'm right on that. Yeah. Then the federal government would help underwrite the cost of all those school meals. They're now bringing it down to like 25%. So the bottom line is there's a potential for more federal funds to come into states to help fund school meals that would make the price tag for the state significantly less. But But I mean, we need the White House, and I'm sure many of you are already in contact with them, but they need to know what's happening here, what's working, and we need to get them out here as well, because some of the stuff Congress needs to do, some of the stuff they can do administratively. Some of the stuff is grants and stuff that they can award within their discretion, and we want to make sure that they know all the good stuff that's happening.
I think we have time for a few more questions, but I'd like to direct one actually to Mr. Gilbert. A lot of the questions and comments about nutrition in school, and I saw you were pretty excited about some of the proposals. I would like to, if you could share with us and your thoughts on the programs and how it can improve CMS schools.
Thank you. I'm Fred Gilbert. I'm an area supervisor for Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools Child Nutrition Program and also past state president for the School Nutrition Association. I want to thank our representatives for being supporters and leading the charge for universal meals and listening to our concerns. We meet with them yearly. We go up there and they always spend the time listening to our concerns and what we're asking for. Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools, I feel, has a great program. We do a lot with North Carolina Farm to School programs and have, when the students come back in August till they leave in June, we have fresh vegetables from across the state coming in, starting off with watermelon, apples, sweet potatoes, and going through in April and May with fresh strawberries coming into our students in classrooms. Our meal programs, we finished serving students on June 9th. On Monday, June 12th, we started our summer feeding program already. We have two different programs. We have a delivery system where we take it to different sites across Mecklenburg County. We have fed, 1 week ago, we fed 9,500 lunches from our production site, 6,500 breakfasts. In our school sites that we have open, we did 8,700 lunches and 5,800 breakfasts, and those are increasing as more students are getting into the program and as more production sites are opening up. The idea of universal meals would help North Carolina tremendously. The debt in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools is over $500,000 this past year. We don't turn anyone away. We feed every student that comes in. We don't offer them an alternative meal. We don't send them back to their seats and have them go hungry. We feed students.
Thank you.
North Carolina this past year, on the state level, took over the reduced copay of 40 cents and paid for that. We're waiting for the state budget to be passed again to see if they're going to do this again. We're hoping that they will do that. We need that to happen. On a federal level, the Keep Kids Fed Act expires tomorrow. Is there any chance of any other legislation coming out that'll increase that or bring that back, where that's an extra 40 cents for each lunch that's served and an extra 10 cents for each breakfast that's served across the country? So we're looking hopefully for more legislation on that.
They're going to reintroduce that.
Thank you so much for that. We need that across not just North Carolina, but across the country. Yes. Our programs, our meals, our nutrition is balanced by a nutritionist, dietitian. We're constantly sampling new products. We do taste testings in schools to see what the students like and what they don't like. We're constantly changing menus. We're fighting supply chain issues, but we keep feeding students. That's what we do. A hungry student cannot learn.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. So I wanted to ask Mr. Beard a question to help round out, and then we can go quickly again with the ladies, if that's all right. Black farmers, urban farmers, and you've heard that a lot. And one thing I wanted people to understand is North Carolina has very specific definitions of farms in terms of where our dollars go to help. Department of Agriculture at the federal level has a broader definition, which is extremely helpful. So Tim, I'd like to know if you could make a few comments about the Urban Ag and Innovative Production Organization and what USDA is doing to help small farmers. It's just if you could take a minute to describe that, please.
Thank you, Barb, and thank you all for what you do every day. So I work for the Natural Resources Conservation Service, And we provide programs that support both small farmers and large farmers. But we do have a urban initiative that we set money aside to support the small farmers in urban areas all across North Carolina. We've drawn lines where we have these urban farmers across the state. And again, we have programs that support that. A lot of our smaller farmers like what we call this one practice is a seasonal high tunnel, which allows them to grow fruits and vegetables in extended period than they normally would, especially during the winter months. And so we have these programs. We try to engage our smaller farmers. We have a committee of smaller farmers that we listen to, and we try to engage them in what we're doing. So that's kind of how we're trying to support the smaller farmers.
Thank you very much.
I'm thinking about a question. Can I ask a question? Okay, because representing small farmers, one of the challenges, we're dealing with climate change is that if you purchase from a local grocery store, right, you purchase vegetables, fruits and vegetables from a local grocery store, it's more likely that that food has traveled 1,500 miles to get there, right? If you purchase from a local farmer's market or direct from a farmer, it's, like we are in Charlotte, we travel on average 8 or 9 miles to the farmer's market. So basically from where you are in Mecklenburg County, it's a short distance. However, farmers who are raising livestock and animals, like we do chickens and goats, who are small farmers, we have challenges for infrastructure for processing our animals, right? I hope there's bee eaters in here. There's processing animals. And it's costly to have a processing center on your farm. It's costly to have a processing center that's all you do. And in fact, the delays in processing are some up to 6 months, a year, 2 years, even more, depending on what kind of livestock you have. And I know there's support for urban farmers. So I was just wondering, is there more help on the way or some solution for that challenge? Because we want that local food, chicken or goat or cow meat, we want beef on the plates of local residents, but we may not be able to do it as farmers if we have the challenges as it relates to food processing. So I don't know where that question should go.
So the federal,
Well,
can you help?
Well, we just passed the, Congressman and I were very bill supporting the president there. And well, infrastructure, I think, takes on a lot of different meanings. And so, that's something that we can look into. I think not included, it may be a way to modify the language. I just think that, we can do what we want to do if we try to do that, which we can do. So I think we need to take a look at it. I was just whispering to the.
I have to believe that there is some federal assistance, grant assistance that may be available. In Massachusetts, when this issue gets brought up to me, the challenge really is at a state level with permitting and getting all the okays to be able to locate it in a certain area. Then you get neighbors that don't want a processing facility anywhere near them and all that kind of stuff. But it sounds like the issue for you is mostly the resources to build the facility. Is that accurate?
I'm speaking for a lot of farmers, but it's $1 million, $500,000, $1 million to process it. But because farming as an industry, small farmers are dwindling in nature.
No, you're absolutely. We need this. The question is the problem just the money, or is the problem the permitting? But on the money side, if there's a plan, I'm happy to work with Alma, to talk to the Secretary of Agriculture about making sure that the USDA has you on the radar screen, because we want what you described, right? We want it to make it easier for local farms to be able to send their goods and their meats and their vegetables to local grocery stores. And by the way, we are all concerned about the fact that this planet has a fever and the climate change is real. And this is a way to deal with it.
Ebony.
So you kind of already wrapped into my question, so I won't ask it as direct as I had it written. It's around climate and environmental stewardship and resilience, and particularly what funds and supports exist for educators like myself who do that work to really be able to tap into starting younger individuals to learning about why this is important, getting into and pairing with and partnering with school systems and local farmers and sustainability departments to really make sure that our young people are on board to understand their potential in this field of climate and environmental stewardship and resilience.
Mention that in throughout our country, you know, we have 19 1890s. Now, 1890 schools are schools of agriculture, and I'm a proud graduate of North Carolina A&T State University. But was able to go on to the Ohio State University only because of that HBCU. So, you know, shout out to HBCUs for the work we do. But I think that, and we've got, I'm working with our ranking member now, ranking member David Scott of the committee, as we have before, to provide scholarships at these 1890s that really focus on agriculture, because we know that you're a young Black farmer with not many of you left. Most of the farmers that look like us and farmers of color, they're aging out. And so we are trying to make sure that we educate young folks about the investments that they can make career-wise in terms of farming and so forth. And so we're using that vehicle through the Ag Committee. And particularly, we had some funding in the last Farm Bill to assist with that process of educating scholarship format.
And look, the issue, I mean, there are not a lot of young farmers in the country anymore, right? I mean, just because it's hard work and you don't make a lot of money, right? I mean, but we need farmers to be able to make a decent living, because one is we want locally grown foods. We want foods from our community, but it's also good for the environment. We passed this bill called the Inflation Reduction Act, and even though its title has nothing to do with a lot of what's in the bill, but a lot of it deals with some of the biggest investments in climate solutions ever put forward. And they're still trying to figure out how they're going to spend the money. So when it comes to like educating young kids about the importance of being good stewards of this planet, I mean, there may be some monies in there that could be utilized by local education districts. Some of this really is going to have to be that the local school systems, we're talking about it at that level, are going to have to take the initiative to say, this is going to be a priority of ours. We're going to start teaching some of this stuff. Some of it's going to be that schools are going to have to start building gardens and greenhouses, you know, on site. Every college ought to have a garden or a greenhouse, right? So people actually know how their food is grown. I mean, we have I got to tell you, I mean, if you gave a standardized test and asked, you know, how potatoes are grown, I bet you half the people wouldn't know. I mean, so we need to get back to those basics, but some of it is going to have to come at the local level. If you have an initiative that you think is worth federal funding, you know, show it to us, get it, because there is money. There is money for the first time ever to support these kinds of things. Not just for our local farmers, but for our school systems. And so we want to work with you on that.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit from local farmers for one moment. As an independent food pantry that has been full choice since we started, most of our clients that we serve have multiple and complex health crises, but they're also seeking emergency food assistance because their SNAP has been cut to the point of insufficiency. As this converges with the over-centralization of our federal food system, the political, economic, and climate challenges that we face in our time, what is the path forward in ensuring that every American has healthy food access? And what answers as service providers can we give as the front line in communicating kind of what's happening from up above to what people need to know and see on the ground and try to prepare for.
Now, we were talking about this beforehand. I don't know whether people realize this, but do you know what the average SNAP benefit per person per meal is? About $2.
41
Yeah, right.
cents.
Yeah, right. Yeah, my coffee this morning cost more than that. So this is not an adequate benefit now, and it's better now than it was before the pandemic, right? The trouble is, and we boosted it up during the pandemic, and then it got cut back down again, and without people knowing about it. But it's about a little over $2 per person per meal. That's what we're talking about here. You cannot live on that, right? And that's why, SNAP helps people in the beginning of the month, but then in the middle of the month or to the end of the month, people need to look at different options. Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. We're in a battle right now in Congress. I mean, we have people that want to add more restrictions on what people can buy, on who is eligible, on how long you can be on the program. So we have to try to beat those back. But we're not going to be able to, I don't believe, with this current makeup of Congress, be able to lift up the benefit to make it what it was during the pandemic. And I'm just sad to say that. I mean, this budget deal that the president struck, he made an awful deal less awful. And we protected some groups of people from losing their benefits, but we established a new category where about 750 to 800,000 people in this country will lose their benefits. I mean, this is what we're doing is outrageous. So look, I mean, we have to fight back. I mean, I know it's hard because the people who we're talking about here, who come to you, are exhausted. I mean, they're trying to, being a parent, trying to figure out, where am I going to have food for my kid tonight? I mean, who could imagine, who wants to be in that position? And so that's their life, but for the rest of it, I mean, we have to push back. We have to fight harder. I mean, we have to expose the truth, and we have to, and I tell this all the time to people who come in, we can't settle for BS when you talk to your Congress people or your state legislators. I mean, let's be honest. When's the last time any member of Congress or any state legislator said to you, I'm pro-hunger? They never say that, right? But yet you look at their voting records and you say, well, your voting record tells a different story. We have to toughen up. So when we lobby our legislators and they tell us, I support our food banks, or I give at church, or I do this, or I do that. And we look at their record, and if their record is one that increases hunger, we have to call them out. We cannot be cheap dates when it comes to lobbying on these issues. And for too long, we have been. And look, the niceties have to go away. We have to be respectful. We don't want to, not be, but the niceties of just giving people the benefit of the doubt. People have records. And if the records are ones that increase hunger, we have to call them out. I mean, look, we are trying to figure out a nationwide campaign to do no damage on the Farm Bill. And here's the deal. Look, I want a farm bill. I want a better farm bill for our farmers, for our small farmers. But here's the deal. If they screw around with SNAP, then there should be no farm bill. We're not going to vote for a farm bill that's going to increase hunger in this country. And that's the bottom line, right?
Let me just add to that, because in the debt ceiling, you all remember that, right? And the negotiations, there were some awful things put there on the backs of poor folks and people who need food, that I think will decimate the SNAP program. Right, the work requirements, they're just ridiculous. People who can work are working. Now they want people, they're looking at even increasing those. Now that came through already in the debt ceiling bill. Okay, they made those awful changes, held poor folks hostage, and that's what happened. Now that we are addressing the farm bill in the Ag Committee, they're coming back, and we're hearing all kinds of, and even got to get rid of SNAP. So we really, as the congressman has said, we are in a fight right now. Because if you thought those were bad in terms of the things that were put, debt ceiling connected with that, the passage of the debt ceiling, they are looking at even more cuts. And because SNAP, that portion of the Farm Bill represents about almost 79–80%. That's where they're aiming. That there's going to be more.
We have time for one last question. So Tina?
Well, mine's more of a comment, but I just want to say thank you for all that you are doing to protect and hopefully at some point strengthen amazing programs like SNAP, because for every one person that I feed at Loaves and Fishes Friendship Trays, SNAP is feeding 9 others. And we are the largest provider of TFAP commodities here in Mecklenburg County. So thank you for all that you do for that. But you have a room here. I'm an action-oriented person. You have a room full of fellow hunger fighters. If you had one charge, one action that you want us to go home today that could help you in your work and all that you're doing to try and protect and strengthen these benefits, what would your one call to action be for those of us in this room that want to help you in your fight against hunger?
Question.
Well, I will say, first of all, that, policymakers shape policy. You shape policymakers. Somebody's going to make a decision for and about you, most times without you. So you've got one or two things you can do. You can put yourself in a position, as we have, to make those decisions, or you need to be able to control those of us who make those decisions on your behalf. Now, we've got all kinds of mechanisms to contact people. You can tweet, you can text, you can email, you can call, you can go to Washington, but you don't always have to go to Washington. We have every member of Congress has a local office. But I think that contact and that pressure, that advocacy that you can bring to hold elected officials, those of us who hold the public purse, to hold us accountable. That's really what it's about. And you are the ones who can do that. Because I'll tell you, when we keep getting these calls and, just keep calling and emailing and bust the computers open and, all those kinds. And I've had people to tell me, well, can you get your folks to stop calling? They're blocking up my lines. Can you get them to stop sending emails? But I think we have to bring that kind of pressure. That we're in a very critical time right now. Hunger is a crisis, not just in this district, in this state, but in communities across this country. And we need you to be advocates to help us.
I will concur with everything Alma said. I mean, look, elections matter. And by the way, it's not just on the federal level, it's at the state and the local level too. People at the city and at the state level can be helpful or harmful as well. I wish somebody had a magic wand and give me a new Congress, but that's not going to happen in the next year and a half. But let me just say one thing that I think would be really helpful. I think we have to be better storytellers. And I say that because, we have lots of think tanks and we're inundated with figures and facts and statistics and graphs. All of that is vital and important and necessary. But I think for a lot of politicians, I think we've lost our human ability to feel what they mean. And I think that when you tell stories about, kids you see in school or kids who come to your pantry or people who you deal with, for anybody to just turn a blind eye to that. Because we're all human, even some of the people we serve with are human, right? And so those stories can be very, very powerful. I said before, when you meet a hungry child, it breaks your heart. We have members of Congress who have never met a hungry child. We have members of Congress who have never sat down with anybody on SNAP. We've had members of Congress who have never been into a food bank or food pantry, who have never seen the people that you see, whether it's on your farm or in your place of business, because you can get elected without doing that. But telling these stories, I think, are very, very powerful. I've seen it move some people. I mean, we got to get them to listen, and we have to get them in a room with people to tell the stories. But stories are powerful, and if it doesn't impact them, it impacts public opinion. Because, as I said, the narrative out there does not reflect the reality. Because you can be a politician and go to a Chamber of Commerce meeting and say, you know what, want to save money? Let's cut SNAP because people ought to be working, and leave it at that in a sort of applause line, because the people in that audience have no idea who we're talking about. And so we have to be better at telling stories. And so if there's, and I know there's lots of stories in this auditorium here today and on this panel, and we just need to amplify your words.
Somebody told a story to one of our colleagues the other side of the aisle, and for having the only and the first that we had on nutrition. We have hearings all the time, and we had to beg for one to deal with this issue. And one of my colleagues, one of my Republican colleagues, raised the question to one of our witnesses. He says, I don't understand why people who get SNAP can't buy a rotisserie chicken. I just, and I think he was pretty genuine. Again, as the congressman has said, we want to tell people what they can buy, what they can eat, but who shouldn't be able to buy a rotisserie chicken? But the fact that the guidelines right now won't allow that, to me, was just unconscionable. I wasn't aware of that, and neither was the gentleman, I assume. That's somebody told him that story, and I just wanted to just put that out.
Thank you so much. Our journey continues. We're continuing to write the story in some new chapters based on the strength and the love that you've given us. So we want to thank you again for spending this time. Thank you, panelists, for wonderful questions. Thank you, Tim, for being here. Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. Thank you, Davida. Thank you so much. And I think this concludes our program.